So for this video, what we're going to be covering is some basic tweens in Adobe Animate CC. The tweens that we're going to cover are going to be a motion tween, a color tween, and an alpha tween. So it's pretty basic stuff in which objects across the screen are going to kind of go flying around for the most part. So on our Adobe Animate screen, you'll notice that we have some options on our new menu. Always select an ActionScript 3.0, and the reason why is when we preview the movie, it compiles a little faster, and it's a little bit less buggy than if we were to go with an HTML. So ActionScript 3.0 it is, and there we have. So what we have is we have our tools, we have our timeline, we have our properties. The only thing about this interface is it's not really geared to animators, so one thing I will do is click on Windows, go to Workspaces, and I'm going to switch to the animator. You'll notice that the animator, for me anyways, has the tools laid out in a better position, as well as the properties a little bit more handy, because you have more options for lighting, coloring, etc. So we've got our stage. I'm just going to zoom in on this just a little bit, so I'm going to hold down the control button on my keyboard and use the mouse wheel just to scroll in ever so slightly. It's a little too much. Alright, so before we actually get into tweens, I'm just going to explain the concept of symbols. Now, anything that's drawn in Adobe Animate is in non-symbol form. And what that means is it can't be used for motion tweens or color tweens or alpha tweens. So before we get into actually putting this into a symbol, I'm just going to just show you how every object that you have has a stroke and a fill, and they can be separated. This is definitely different compared to Adobe Illustrator, and there's a reason why Adobe Animate did this, but for now we'll just talk about just putting these together and just taking this object and converting it to a symbol. Now, in order to convert to a symbol, you have to double click on it, or you can just use your Windows selection to highlight the object. The two ways of converting something to a motion or to a symbol, rather, are convert to symbol through modify, or you can just hit the F8 shortcut key. So I'm just going to go ahead and convert to symbol here through the menu, and always name your symbols and your layers. I'll call this box for now. As soon as I hit OK, you'll notice that in my libraries panel, you'll notice that the object is here. So perfect, so we've got this in symbol format. It is in our library, and we're going to create a motion tween. But before we do that, I did say that I would talk about what a symbol is. So a symbol is an object that is reusable. It can be recycled, and most importantly, it keeps your file size down. So the computer looks at all these instances of a symbol and keep the file size down based on that, rather than having many different types of boxes, which just adds to your file size. Now the cool thing about symbols too is I can actually modify them very, very easily. So if I have a whole bunch of symbols and if I want to change one, I can just double click on it. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that we're actually inside the box, which is right here, labels. And I'm just going to go ahead and just pick a different color, and you'll notice that they just change all at once. Now to get outside of modifying the symbol, I'll go back into my scene one. So one more time, if I actually want to go ahead and modify a symbol, I'm going to double click it. I could change it, do many, many different things with it, and it just updates all the other ones. So let's go back here. So let's clean up my stage. And next, what we're going to do here is we're going to actually then take this and we're going to have it sort of jump across the screen. So we've got this in symbol format. Next, I'm going to my timeline, and on my timeline, I'm going to do a quick right-click, create motion tween. Now my timeline turns blue, and I have a dot in the very first frame, but I don't have a dot in the second frame. So that's easy. I'm going to take this object, I'm just going to drag it across my stage, and there you go, the dot's being inserted. And that's exactly what motion tweens are. You have a starting position, and you have a finishing position, and everything in between is a tween, because the computer just figures it out automatically. Now I can also take this path, and I can actually stretch this out just like that. So to preview this, what you do is look on your keyboard and hit Control-Enter, and in doing so, you'll notice that the box jumps around. Now a couple problems, the box doesn't look very natural, it should probably be spinning, and it's going a little bit too fast at the same time. So those are two easy fixes that we can work on. So I'll close that off, and if I want to go ahead and make this whole animation slower, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the very last frame of my motion tween, and stretch it out. So that's the first part. Now the second thing is, remember I've got my starting position and my finishing position. So taking my free transform tool, I'm going to go ahead and just rotate this, something like that, and I'll scrub my playhead, and you'll notice that it starts to rotate, so it looks a little bit more natural. So I can just preview that. Maybe that's a little too slow, but you get the idea in any event. Alright, so that's the very first type of tween that we covered. So the next one that we're going to be doing is a color tween. So the general rule in Adobe Animate is you want to have a separate layer for every single tween. So just so we don't get confused with all the layers, I'm just going to just double click this one, call this motion. And now I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to just rename this one color. Alright, now you'll notice that of course I have blue, which signifies motion tween, and I have all these frames that are blank. So what I plan to do is grab my ellipse tool, and I'm going to hold down the shift key so I can constrain this into a circle, and then I'm just going to go ahead and just change the color just so we can just differentiate it just a little bit here. Alright, so if you recall, if we want to turn this into a tween, whether it be color, motion, or alpha, we have to convert it to a symbol. So let's go ahead and double click on this, go back into modify, convert to symbol. We're going to call this ball. Awesome, so far so good. And then going back into our timeline, we want to right click, create motion tween. So everything stayed the same. Now I'm going to again take my playhead position at the very last frame. And what I want to do is I want my options to show up in here, so I actually have to click on this object one more time. A lot of people forget to actually click on this to actually get a lot of these different options. So under color effect next, I'm going to go from none to advanced. And then from here, I'm just going to play with a whole bunch of different sliders to achieve different colors. And I'm just clicking and dragging them at this point. Alright, so I'm going to go Control Enter, and one is moving and rotating, and the other one is changing colors ever so slightly, but it does change colors. Of course, what I can also do is I can take this and I can drag this across the screen, because you can have a color tween with a motion tween if you'd like. Okay, awesome. So the last tween that we have to cover for this video is a alpha tween. So I'm going to take my layer and call this alpha, and I'm going to grab a different object altogether. This will be a pentagon, and we want this to fade into absolutely nothing. So in doing so, again, we have to convert this to symbol. Call this pentagon, and go ahead and create a motion tween. Again, while my playhead is in the very last frame, I'm going to select the object so I have all of my properties with the different color effects, and go back to advanced. And from here, I'm just going to take the alpha slider, and I'm just going to have it so it disappears. So you can see I've got a motion tween, a color tween, and an alpha tween, some of them mixed together. So you give that a try and see how it goes for you.